Hello?
Hi Vincent, how are you?
Good, and I have something to talk about, and let's just talk about. So I'm talking to this right wing guy who is actually more, on top of things than others, is more serious, actually contemplative. But his problem is now Oswald Spengler, who wrote The Decline of the West, wrote another book called Man and Technics, which was a short and truncated version of The Decline of the West. And basically, his thing was he said, as the West declines, that people are going to become philosophers and poets, and people are going to stop doing things like mechanics and science and the hard sciences and even hard versions of psychology that aren't as soft, like personality theory and things like that. People are going to become more interested in the esoteric, and they're basically going to retreat from light and cocoon themselves in these esoteric and occult ideas and basically lose touch with the reality and leave politics to the imbeciles and stuff. And he said of his work, he said it was something like, he said, if I turn one mystic into a scientist or one poet into a politician, I've done my work. He wanted them to actually do the hard stuff in society that would become even harder as things, declined. And I'm basically trying to get him out of focusing in on all these esoteric philosophers and to deal with something more. Hold up. Hey, hold on, my birds were fighting. Um um something more practical. But we were also talking about how he's like, oh, all the right needs is more adequate representation, and the question is, representation for what? And I've brought this up before, maybe with you, but I bring it up with them all the time, is that, okay, before Hitler, that worker German party that he got involved in was nothing. And what did he do? He gave them 25 points. He said, here's our system, and this is what we believe in, and this is what we want, and this is our plan. And it worked, and it galvanized people. But I was just talking to him, that wouldn't work in today's age. People make fun of you if you have a manifesto. People make fun of you if you have a legal system. If you have anything written down that's a cogent ideology, people are, number one, even if they agree with it, they're going to call you an autist, and they're going to just call you some kind of glow fed that's trying to crystallize the right so that it can be attacked and things like that. But the thing is that nobody in the right would be able to agree today to a 25-point system. There can be no Hitler in the right today, because if anyone wrote a 25-point system, everyone would just laugh at them. As you know, because you've written a 25-point system.
Yes, and I didn't get what you were saying about this person you're talking to. So you said he took an interest in Oswald Spengler, who wrote The Decline of the West, which
No,
is a peasant.
I was trying to talk to him about Oswald Spengler because he's involved in all this esoteric philosophy. And I told him that, Oswald Spengler said that in the end of civilization, this becomes a big problem, that everyone wants to talk about metaphysics. You know what I mean? And the thing is,
Oh, it's a kind of displacement therapy.
yeah, for practical stuff, because the practical world becomes too annoying. Politics becomes too annoying. Science becomes too annoying. All of these things, the practical world becomes hard to live in. And so people escape into metaphysics. And he said, you can't do
And
that.
magic, and magical
Yeah.
thinking,
And that's what,
sorcery, witchcraft.
yes, just like, basically what happened in Nazi Germany and why the occult spread so much is people were so miserable with their outside conditions that they just, got involved in nonsense. And, this is like a big problem. And, yeah, it's just, it's people are getting involved in absolute rubbish and, spending all their time.
On
um,
mumbo jumbo and hocus pocus.
Yes, yes, and this is the big problem. And I always tell them in these groups, you know what I mean? I get, I get involved in the esoteric, but I don't get involved in mumbo jumbo. I get involved in like esoteric cults and how they affect society and what their beliefs are. and how this damaged people or damages society, but I don't get into, I don't, you know, I don't want to get into a 5 hour debate about the Trinity. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, can you ever know if God is one or three or both at the same time? No. So, just kind of like, say you don't know and move on to something that actually does matter, like creating a 25-point system where, things are laid out and what is your physical, rational agenda? What are you trying to do to change politics and the real world?
Okay, so I've already got it, and you want to help these people, so you can be my first secular Quranist.
Well,
You
I
just want
mean,
to
I
find
thought,
something that is your own. I think that's a problem. It's like, oh, but it's just Claire's idea. It's not mine, so I won't support it. I want something that is my own. I think
well,
that is the problem. The problem of the ego.
I think that secular Quranism would help white people in that it would get them thinking legalistic instead of metaphysical. White people are okay, did you know that, I don't know if you have this problem in black people in America tend to make fun of white people because we like movies about magic and witchcraft and like imaginary stuff, and you know what I mean, like, fairy tales. We love fairy tales. We love dragons and sorcerers and all this other kind of stuff. And part of black people's dislike for it has to do with their
Yeah,
Christian.
Harry Potter.
Yes, these things are much more prevalent in America amongst white people than it is amongst black people. Like, black people are not known for being in love with Harry Potter in America. I mean, there are, but black people tend to make fun. It's one of the reasons they make fun of white people that were into like fantasy. And somebody said, who was it? Was it? I don't think it wasn't E. Michael Jones. It was the other one. It was the other one that was a professor. What is his name? Not David
Kevin
Wilson.
McDonald.
Kevin McDonald said that one of the reasons that white people are successful is because they live in the imagination. He said money is imaginary, governments are imaginary, these different kinds of ideological systems are all imaginary and only exist in the head. And he said that's kind of like why white people have been so successful, because we do live in the imagination a
Well,
lot.
conceptual and abstract, I would argue, in the world of ideas, rather than, just, in, not being practical, but I see that because everything looks so hopeless, it seems an emotional instinct to dive into fantasy, to retreat from it all.
But white people have a particular weakness for this. White people have a particular weakness
For
for,
romanticism?
yes, and worse than that, just spending all day in their head and contemplating the mysteries of the universe rather than actually you know working on something. And this is why in America, the idea is that all the brown people are going Muslim, and and the white people, if you see, are going Hindu. And that kind of makes sense in that the brown people just want bolts and nuts and a law and a legal system they can follow, and it's about affecting the real world and changing people's behavior and stuff like that, while the whites are all interested in beliefs and contemplating consciousness. You know what I mean? I do, darker races usually don't sit around contemplating the meaning of consciousness. How are we conscious? Why are we conscious? What is it? Is it the brain? Is it the spirit? Is it the soul? Is it this? Is it that? You know what I mean? And like,
Yes, yes, and I think it's a very noticeable pattern with the middle classes. They can talk, because if you're educated, you can talk nonsense for a long, long time and never get anywhere, and it's a kind of ego thing. It's like, yeah, I made these people listen to me even though I said nothing of any significance, and that's how middle class intellectuals get their rocks off,
yeah, but
but
there's
at the
better
expense
ways.
of other people's time and energy.
yes, but there's better. I mean, I look, you want esotericism. I give people esotericism, but I give you esotericism that is on the physical, practical plane. Okay, most people have never heard of Carol Balizad, that nurse who turned against medicine and called it witchcraft and got people to die from medical neglect. Most people have never heard of that, and that's like a really far out there idea, but at least it's something, it's talking about something that affected the world and affected people's real life physical life. I talk about Herbert Armstrong. Most people have never heard of the Armstrong cult, but British Israelism and his anti-Zionism. These are I don't care. The only reason I would care about Herbert Armstrong's belief in the Trinity or not, or the family of gods, is to trace it back to things like his beginnings in Jehovah's Witness and Adventist and Mormonism. I like talking about people's beliefs, but
To
not like
understand their psychology.
to
Is
understand
that
their psychology and to understand their psychology and how they behave and how it's shaped, but where it came from, who they're related to, did it come from Freemasonry, things like that. And it's more of a real world issue. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get into a discussion about whether, you know, the idea of Mormon plurality of gods who have physical bodies is tenable or not. You know what I mean? Is it heretical or not? I mean, these are not the type of things that I'm going to talk about in regards, to when I talk about what's his name? When I talk about anyone. You know what I mean? And like pyramidology. Okay, I didn't get into all the, you know, complicated metaphysics of pyramidology. I cared more about how it was affecting people's reality, and that I was using it as a measure of people's real world actions. So the Freemasons were using pyramidology to promote British Israelism, which was about getting the Jews to Israel and establishing them
how do
there.
they use pyramidology to promote British
Well,
Israelism?
because okay, so they said that so Isaac Newton created the sacred cubit, the Jewish sacred cubit, which was this big long measurement, and he said this big long measurement was used to build the pyramids, and if you count things in the pyramids geometrically using the sacred cubit, you can predict things. Well, John Taylor came along and he broke that sacred cubit up into a bunch of little. I think he broke it up into 1,000, or I don't know what he broke it up into. But when he broke it up into these itty bitty millimeters, those itty bitty millimeters were 1/1000th off of a British inch. So they said, well, the British inch was used to build the pyramids, and that shows that our culture goes all the way back to the pyramids. But then they used this British inch to make all these predictions from passages about the British people and how they're going to rule the world and all this other kind of stuff, and how the Jews are going to be sent back to Israel and, that kind of stuff. But that's actually something, my study of pyramidology wasn't an end in itself. It was to show political intrigue on the part of Freemasons and to show how, Charles Taze Russell said, went against British Freemasonry, British Israelism, and said, well, it's going to be just Zionism. It's going to be the Jews in Israel, and it's going to be all the Gentiles who are non-Trinitarian around them. These were like these things actually matter, right? And like, but there's areas of the Jehovah's Witness religion that just don't matter. There were absurdities that I don't work on, like, there was something about a train and the length of the train meant this and that, and you know what I mean. There's lots of absurdities that I don't focus on because they don't have real world practical power. Like, they don't have real world practical use for me. They don't show some kind of political agenda. They don't show, these different kinds of things. I don't really get into their theology as much when it's not useful. I don't care if the rapture comes before or after the
Yeah,
um
you're not interested in the eschatology, but you are interested in the construction of a belief and moral system.
Yes, and yes, because that's something you could point to, and it affects
It
how
has
people.
real world uses.
Yes, it has real world uses, and you know what I mean. And they don't like. I've been talking about pyramidology. None of them care. None of them care about any of these. They don't care about British Israelism. They don't care about Freemasonry. They just tell me to shut up. You know what I mean? They're just not interested.
Right. So we have kind of explored how these different cults are made up. I mean, you actually, in a way, said you have a DIY, cult kit, in the sense that you offer a belief system. You state a number of principles, and you say, come and be a member of my religious group, and off you go. You have your own cult, and that is how cults are created.
Yes, cults are created. Um, Hold on one second.
And that is also how religions are created. And obviously, cults are just groups who want to be as big as the current, mainstream religious group.
Just give me one second. I just need to fix something on my phone so I don't get interrupted and that I get off of here at the right time.
And and I'm basically saying there's no particular advantage in creating your cult because it'll just take years, decades, centuries to, you know, make a track record for itself that could make sense for people to adopt. Like Scientology, they're still being treated like social pariahs, and therefore, if we want to fix things in our society and we don't think our religion is working anymore, there is a rational way to choose the best religion around after we have understood the purpose of religion. And in a way you have as well, because I know you are focused on the ability to keep your group in existence, and I know you reject heterosexual marriage, and therefore you create an alternative, which is artificial wombs without females.
Yes, I mean, and that's a practical, application. And okay, fine. If you said, well, okay, the Noahide laws say is just get rid of homosexuality, right? But these alt-right men are not willing to actually use most of them. You know what I mean? Make it a law then, or something like that. And that. And if you notice, they just complain about homosexuality, but they have no real way to get rid of it.
Well, unless they propose a change of the law. And the only way they can change the law is to get into politics and get themselves elected, and they know how hopeless it is, so that's why they're just lying around and posting shit, because they've already given up, because they know they're not going to join a political party. And I'm saying basically, you just have to go to the top, because you can't work at it from the bottom, because the people at the bottom are too stupid, too low status and not taken seriously. So you have to take it to the top, and that's what I'm going to, well, that's what I've always proposed to do: sell the idea to the political establishment. Unfortunately, they're not listening to anybody who isn't already in the political establishment, and we have also noticed that what they're doing is kicking out people who are already in the political establishment for wrong think, for proposing things that they dislike. So instead of being open to ideas, they're shutting down. People already in the political establishment are being removed for having the wrong ideas that they dislike. But that doesn't mean we should give up, because what I'm saying is, although most people are sheeple and they will be apathetic at the beginning, once you change their belief, and they think they're going to win, then they will be stirred into action. So you have to give them a narrative that is believable and also factually correct, or at least not open to challenge.
Yeah, I mean, well, factually correct or what,
Or
you
something
know.
that cannot be easily proven to be nonsense, like the Trinity.
Well, yeah, not nonsense. Well, I was trying to tell him that, Gentiles, Christians, and even non-Christian pagan white people, they care about proper belief. They don't, it's not about, the Noahide laws are all about proper action, not proper belief. And that's what Alan Cecil tries to get through all the time, is that he's telling these Christians, he says it's not about getting a new belief system so much as it is simply following the rules. And they're all wrapped up in people believing the right thing, and they're not all wrapped up in actually, like, enforcing proper behavior through the law. And you're never going to get anywhere with that. I mean, it's not the Christian age anymore. And it used to be that if you had the wrong belief, you were burnt at the stake. And I don't think they're going to get into that anymore, because they all disagree with each other. If they went on belief only, then Christians would be burning pagans, and pagans would be burning Christians, and Trinitarians would be burning Unitarians. There's only one way to punish belief, and that is basically to kill you for your belief.
Unless you have an imperial religion that says you can believe whatever the hell you like, you just have to obey the law and pay your taxes, and that's all we care about. But you just keep going to your places of religious worship as long as you pay your taxes and obey the law. And this is how you define an imperial religion. Because an empire is by definition multiracial and multicultural. They're only part of the empire because you have conquered them. They are by definition people of another race, people of a different culture, and people with a different belief system. And I'm trying to point out that in many ways, Islam is kind of liberal. If you accept that it supports the First Amendment, and talks about, oh well, these Jews, these Christians, these people of the book, and these polytheists, because it's always talking about people who are not Muslim and how to treat them.
Well, yes. Unfortunately.
So it is an imperial religion for that reason alone. Although, as a tribe, you can use it as well. It's that flexible. Because, there might be people who say, we don't want no empire, because look what's happened to the Roman Empire. They've completely lost their identity. They're just a mongrel race of, Europeans, and look at the Italians, what good are they? It's that kind of idea. And the thing about having an empire is that eventually you're going to lose it. And you'll be, always worried about losing it and fighting imperial wars. And also you can become a victim of your own success. You may think that you've conquered the world and nobody's ever going to invade you. But look at, the West, America. They can't even keep out immigrants because, one part of the political establishment is saying, well, just bring them in. They'll be cheaper than the useless white indigenous ones. We'll
I
just...
know. Did you see that now Indians own more property in London than English people?
Yeah, I'm not surprised because the whole thing about these boring religions that I know you hate is that they say things like, oh, be frugal, be careful, and save your money, and don't waste your money in extravagant behavior, and obviously if if you're in negative interest rates, where the bank is actually saying, we're going to charge you money for keeping your money in our bank, then people will think, well, might as well spend the money then. Otherwise, I'm just, the bank will just take it away. and this is the ultimate extreme of usury, because basically, usually starts by, come to our bank, we're going to pay you a good rate of interest on your savings and keep your money safe. And that's fine until, the government does so much borrowing that nobody who, people will think you're never going to pay back your enormous amounts of debt. Look at the way you've been living. Look at how useless your people are. Look at how you don't even invest in your own people and just want them to die childless. And you don't bother educating them properly. You trick them into getting student loans, and then they don't even have a decent job after they graduate, and they have to wait at tables, which they could easily have done before they went to university. There's so much malign encouragement, and so much is not being acknowledged. But the long and short of it is that if you know that your money is going to lose value through inflation, you will think, well, I better spend it now to get more things than if I waited, and my money loses its value. So everybody spends, nobody saves. So when some opportunity comes along, you have no money, and you will end up being like slaves, and your government doesn't care. But people who come from a harder life kind of see these things like, yes, we must work hard, we must have children, we must stay together for the sake of the children, and parent them properly so they love us and respect us and will look after us in our old age, etc. And these societies do better. And what are all the 5 world religions about than to do this? But unfortunately, Christianity is the weakest link because of its absurdity and, well, it's repellent absurdity, which could only be enforced by draconian punishment, such as burning heretics at the stake. And the moment the government stopped doing that, but before 80 years was up, there was the American Revolution, followed by the French Revolution, followed by the Russian Revolution, and it was all about rejecting the corrupt government of their absolute monarch. And this is something I don't feel Westerners quite understand, because I know, the British are still sentimental about their monarchy, and, the Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, and the Americans have helped in, promoting this idea of them being a soap opera in, Netflix series like The Crown. And they're trying to turn them into, characters in a soap opera and romanticising the whole thing. I mean, for all I know, Americans might even start their own monarchy because, they've got one branch of the British royal family already living in California, right? So I'm saying it's regressive. Having a king over you is regressive. I mean, but the only purpose of a king was to lead his army into battle. If no man was brave enough, I guess you're not going to have a country, because you'll just get invaded and taken over and invaded and taken over, unless you have a man prepared to, lead his men into battle, being the first, saying charge and all that. And now, warfare isn't conducted like that. And in any case, the institution of monarchy only favours a few, royal families, and you get a very small pool of political talent. So that's why you get crap kings and, really horrible kings who, provoke rebellion against themselves, such as in France and in Russia, when they really, really do the wrong thing and really, really piss people off, there is revolution. Examples of regicide would be Charles I in the English Revolution, when England briefly became a republic, and then and of course the French and the Russian Revolution. So that's and it's like, well, if people understood how things work, that they would have all, dumped their monarchies. But I know the British are still clinging to theirs, and the Americans are helping the British cling to theirs by, funding the Crown, which is obviously quite an expensive series, because of the locations and the settings and everything. So, and also America wants Britain to continue holding on to its crown territories in Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, because Australia is key to the American maritime empire. Because, on their way to disrupt the trade routes of China, it needs to have its US naval bases in Australia and Subic Bay in the Philippines. So, the British monarchy has a purpose for the American empire. And most white people, they're still sentimental about their monarchy. And the thing about Islam is that they go on about the caliphates, they're caliphs, and the caliph is not a king. And even Muslims themselves are a bit confused about this, because they think, oh, what's the difference? A caliph is a king, isn't it? It's like, no, because the rightly guided caliphs, the first four ones, were not even related to each other. They were chosen by consultation or whatever, I don't know, but they're not related, and they didn't, pass on their leadership position to their, male heirs. And over time the Muslims even forgot that this was, Islam supports a republic and not, kingdoms or monarchs. And of course the most important monarchy in Islam is the Saudi monarchy, and it's an absolute monarchy. And a lot of these things can't be talked about in Saudi. So, I think, Westerners need to understand, or ask themselves anyway, do we want to live in a monarchy or do we want to live in a republic? And if we live in a republic, Islam is a religion that most supports this system. Can we be an empire if we're a republic? Yes, because Islam is an imperial religion. And these things are not being discussed or understood. And nobody wants to talk about it. They just prefer posting their dumb shit or their or the hocus pocus that they like so much. Usually on drugs. I had an experience with God. And these are just subjective experiences that cannot be objectively proven. But
Yeah,
people,
no,
I notice,
know.
are into this sort of thing,
Basing,
and are
basing,
even being encouraged to do so by psychiatrists and psychologists.
yeah, basing your life on mystical experiences is not really very helpful, and it causes more problems than it solves. Actually, it solves no problems, and it actually just causes problems, and that's it, because then everyone's divided by their subjective experience, right? Like, well, I did this magical ritual and this god came to me, but I did, and then the other person comes in, well, I did this magical ritual and God told me something different. You know what I mean? And then we're fighting over what different gods told different people. What did that mystical experience, what did all their collective mystical experiences solve? What did it solve?
Nothing, because then people, come into competition with each other. I mean, in the same way that if we were all atheists, we would, be thinking, well, who are you to tell me what to do? And the same with idolatry, because, people will just create their own gods.
Well, yeah, but even when you have a monotheistic God, people say that God said different things or believes different things, or, God spoke to me, all this other kind of stuff.
Yeah, but what the Muslims do is they do this thing called takfiring each other, which is basically calling each other heretics for wrong think and all that. But even that is helpful, and I suppose unavoidable because they kind of want to show off to each other about, their more correct interpretation of the Quran, or their, better understanding of their religion. But at least that would be a constructive way of making them talk about their religion. I mean, I think people, do it to, through political correctness. It's called purity spiraling, right? It's like, even in this sort of marginal ideology, I'm more, principled than you are, or more fanatical than you are, and I dare say, propose more extreme things to show my, belief in, whatever. So we don't want that, It's very disruptive to social stability for all these different cults to keep popping up, and that's why you need to say, if you want to be mainstream, this is what we believe as Americans, or Germans, or whatever, and that is how you kind of get people to at least agree on what the rules are, and even if they don't quite agree about the reason behind it, they'll at least obey the rules to avoid punishment. And then this becomes self-reinforcing. I mean that's how it works, but it's broken down,
Skyworks is in here saying you still haven't progressed too far in the gaining of wisdom. You lack true intellect. Like, we lack true intellect. What do you mean we lack true intellect? You people don't even agree on anything or even know what the fuck you're talking about. When you people get metaphysical, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I don't think you each other know what each others are talking about. And you have different definitions for all different kinds of things. And, then you come to people who are more logical, rational, and scientific, and you tell us that we lack true intellect. What is true intellect? Doing a magical ritual and feeling the presence of God and feeling as though he told you something?
Yeah. So you're talking about this right-wing person? Is it
No,
him?
no. This guy Skyworks 600.
Right.
That's in the comments now. Basically, no, we're not letting Rock Muncher on. Rock
Yeah.
Muncher is the one that just makes fun and yawns.
Yes, I know.
We're not
So
letting you on, Rock Muncher.
no. But I mean, this is a problem, and they can't. I think they can understand it if they tried, but they're not even going to try because they're hopeless people and they think they're going to fail. They assume failure, and that's why they never ask the obvious next question. But I'm getting more of the obvious next question people now. But even after you tell them, it's like, oh, not for me. I'm not going to, I'm not going to stick my neck out, kind of thing. But actually, this is actually a common problem. When people kind of agree, but they're too afraid to be seen to be publicly agreeing with you. I mean, I get people saying, yeah, I got your book, but I'm not going to review it because I don't want them to track me, or I'm too scared to buy your book because under my real name, or on Amazon, and that kind of thing. So the fear is everywhere, and you need to give them a narrative with which to overcome that fear. And I'm saying you might as well invoke the Abrahamic God, because you can win the arguments. That is the thing. You can win all your arguments using the Abrahamic God. We're in this terrible fix now because we've disobeyed his laws. And that's why, nothing works and everything is breaking down.
Okay, Skyworks is like, oh, you're triggered. Here, tell me this, Skyworks. Are you Christian? If you are Christian, tell me why God is 1 and 3 and times at the same time, and not 1 and 10 at the same time. Or, the way the Hindus, it's 1 and millions at the same time.
Is he Christian? The Skyworks Christian?
I don't know, but Khalid Safir is in here now, and he said, poor white people, they don't have a religion, so they're trying to make one that agrees with everything they want to believe, like do anything by the way you want. So, Muslims created a religion that worked for them, and that's why it's so primitive and barbaric and backward. If Raymond Cattell, who I follow, said that people create religions that work with their sentiments. Arabs and dark people did not get handed a revelation. They created a revelation that worked for them. And yes, white people want a revelation that works for them. They want something that's liberal, open, tolerant, understanding, scientific, not irrational. They don't want, men stoning their daughters to death for adultery or fornication. And yeah, we're not arrogant like brown people are, and where we think that there's only one God, that only one opinion, and our one opinion is the only one that actually works. In polytheism, you have to understand other opinions. You have to understand other opinions. And so dark people created a religion that worked for them. And yes, white people are escaping Christianity. It's not meant for us. It was never meant for us. It was enforced on us. And yes, we are trying to create something that will be understanding of gays and women, and not oppress women, and not be anti-scientific. We don't want to hear Muhammad flew to the moon on a horse. You know what I mean? That's brown people stuff.
Well, I mean, you could be so helpful because I want you to be the first gay secular Quranist, and I'm female. People keep forgetting that. I'm not even Muslim, so I'm not going to be, that oppressive towards my own sex.
Okay, see, Skyworks 600,000. Now I'm a sane, sage atheist. What now? Then why are you giving us a hard time about not wanting to be into insane metaphysics? That doesn't make sense. What if you're an atheist, what point do you have? What are your metaphysics? I mean, I'm an agnostic, and I don't really have I don't even know if I guess everyone has some degree of metaphysics, but like, as an agnostic, no, I'm not going to sit around and debate the Trinity.
Yeah, it's a waste of time, and nobody really believes it. Which is why Christianity failed, right? I mean, that's the problem.
Oh,
Hi,
he's here.
Khaled.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Vincent. Good talking to you. Haven't talked to you for a while. Got to have you on my stream at some point, hopefully.
Yes, yes, yes. Things have been progressing. I got a website for the gay militant stuff. I wrote out my manifesto.
Oh, you've been busy. Okay.
Yes, I
Uh,
wrote out I wrote out the manifesto, and we were talking about actual practical metaphysics, and you said white people don't have a religion. Well, in that manifesto I outlawed monotheism, because the point is I didn't relate it to brown people. I related it to heterosexuals. Heterosexuals want a monotheistic God because they're very arrogant, and they want to be the center of attention, and they want to be the only one whose opinion is acceptable. And even when it's not based on logic or reason, they just say, well, my opinion needs to be the number one opinion, and I'm not going to consider anyone else's opinion. Whereas gay people, in your case with you white people, we're not so arrogant, and we're open to the idea that there is another God with another opinion that might do things better, that we can
I'm
learn
open
from.
to all sorts of ideas. I just need proof. Like, yeah. Like just generally in science, people are always looking for a unified law because they think there's one source for everything. It would be weird if there wasn't, because there'd be too many inconsistencies with scientific laws and things like
No, there
that.
would be no inconsistencies. I mean, atoms break down into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller parts, and they all work together beautifully. There's nothing anti-scientific about constant pluralism and constant reduction.
Hmm. So I've just jumped in. I just looked to the title. I actually forgot what it was already. What was it like? Something to do with,
The trouble of white people.
yeah. And I thought that was. I really do think they're really suffering because they're trying to find a direction, but at the same time, uh, they won't accept direction from anybody. They want to be, basically, their religion seems to be just freedom, and freedom to be chaotic doesn't help. I think
Yes, it does.
just.
No, like, Rome and Greece and everything worked on polytheism and chaos for centuries. It's just, and then the thing is that you come in and, with your dilapidated cultures, and like Claire does, well, look, we've been around all this time, but what kind of life are you living? I think white people would rather be dead than live under strict monotheism.
We definitely got to have you back on, Vincent. It was very entertaining last time. Everybody was shocked every time you talked. So, yeah.
But the thing is that the only reason that I would support secular Quranism in the West is that it would get white people thinking legalistically. The thing that I
Mm,
like about the Noahide laws and Islam is that they're legalistic religions, and Islam mixes in nonsense into there. But white people don't think legalistically. They care about metaphysics, and because Christianity was all about proper belief, right? It was about, it was about proper belief. It was about believing in the Trinity or not. It was about how you believed and how you thought about God. And it was less about your actions, because you get away with your actions in Christianity. All you have to do is believe that Jesus is the Messiah. You can murder, rape, steal, kill, and you're still going to heaven. Whereas in Islam, not only would you not, but there's physical, natural laws against these things. There's if you do these things, you're punished.
So, what do we have to do to get you to convert to Islam, Vincent? You sound like you're getting there.
Well, no, I mean, I stole from Judaism and Islam, and created like a point system, and saying this is what you have to do and this is what you can't do. And one of those you can't do is going to be is no polytheism. And another one is going to be that you cannot say, as in Islam and Judaism, that
Do-
God is totally 100% outside of the physical reality, because that causes problems. If God is physical and material, then the universe never needed to be created. If God is
Mm,
uncreated, if God is uncreated, this is why I think Muslims and Jews and Christians don't want God. They don't like idolatry, because that makes God physical. And so therefore the answer to where did the universe come from is answered, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, so if God is physical, yeah, you put a lot of limitations on God. Is that what you're saying, Vincent?
No,
I would agree with you.
you don't put limitations on God, but, well, do you put limitations on God? That's a question that is a little bit above my pay grade.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know, and you would have to convince me of that, because right now I'm not thinking that.
Oh, I
But,
thought that's what you were saying. I misunderstood.
well, could no that if God is physical, the universe can be uncreated.
Oh, that's very interesting. If God is physical, it can be That's beyond my pay grade now. Like, who's the scientist here? What's going on?
No,
And
no,
Guy Polly is really funny.
the thing is that what is so this is what the theists say. They say, well, the universe couldn't have come into existence by itself, because that breaks the laws of science. So therefore there must be a God outside of time and space with magical powers that created all of this. But with idolatry, when you say that God is the physical universe, then the physical universe can be uncreated. It can,
Mm.
just as God is uncreated, the universe can be uncreated, because God is the physical universe.
Yeah, I mean, if the universe can be uncreated, therefore, and God is the universe, then, and you can already see there are lots of black holes uncreating the universe, so God could be sucked up into a black hole. Is that what you're saying?
Well, God would be the black
Potentially.
hole. God would be is the black hole if God is
Ah.
the universe. So God is the black hole. So I mean, maybe he's absorbing and creating himself at the same time. You know what I mean? He's absorbing and creating. And they say they put limits on God. Like, so what if God has limits? I mean, that
Mm,
doesn't mean, if let's say God has limits, but look at everything he is controlling and he is doing. And that seems good enough for me. That seems good enough for me. That nay, he look, there's a limit to a human being, but look at everything they can do physically. So if you're saying,
mm,
so if look at all that we can do, and
mm.
that will only expand. So if God was like us, but just magnified a billion times, he's God to us. He can do
Sure.
whatever he wants to us. He's God to us. Maybe he's not God to a mystical God that's outside of the universe, maybe he's not God. But if that God doesn't exist, then that God is the greatest God. You're not going to get any higher.
Sure, fair enough. I mean, I'm just wondering how you guys operate in your live stream. So, are the live chat like a sideshow? Should we attempt to answer some of them?
Yeah, no, sure, you can.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I like Guy Prolly, quite entertaining as well. Like, look at all the things God is doing. But he made another comment, said this guy. He's entertaining. I'm not laughing at you, Vincent, but he said this guy is the end of 100% of his white lineage. There's no white after him. What do you think about that? Have you you might have adopted somebody, Vincent? What's
Well, no,
how
I mean, the idea is if I get enough money, I will be able to have a child. And just because I have to rely on surrogacy, look, I would have to pay a surrogate, but if you have a wife, you have to pay for her too, and her
yeah.
food and all this other kind of stuff.
Is there
It's
any
not
chance
like,
you might get a black child as a
no,
a surrogate? Okay, interesting.
no. I mean, I would try to do white eggs and a white surrogate and stuff like that. And, the thing is that I do have a belief system, and I don't know if we talked about beyondism. I think we did, and Raymond could tell. But my belief system, or not my belief system, my moral and ethical system is based on kind of like scientific testing. So you let
Hmm.
everyone do whatever they want, and then you observe them, and you say, okay, societies, what happens to societies that allow drug use versus societies that don't? What happens to societies that give women education and freedom, and societies that don't? How do these operate? Is
That
this
would be
similar?
such a cool live stream if we discussed how to make the perfect religion. And then you could have your ideas, and I could compare it to Islam, which I think is pretty good religion. I mean, I agree with Skyworks 600 that they said to me, he or she said to me, your assumptions are not necessarily facts, they're merely a perspective you've adopted. Yeah, as far as I know, I say no. There's no such thing as a fact. It's just the best we know, right? That's what I'm going by. So I agree with you, Skyworks 600, and I think Vincent, that would be such a cool live stream. You've got to do it at some point.
Yes, I would like to do that. I do like talking about beyondism, and I've been trying to spread it because he tried to make a scientific religion. He was a personality scientist. And so basically, I mean, if you're a personality scientist, you're studying individual differences, right? You're studying individual differences between people and how that outcomes in their life. So he said, just apply this to societies instead of individuals, and you can learn from an individual. You can say, okay, this individual did hard drugs his whole life, and look what happened to him. This individual was a
Mm.
homosexual his whole life, and look what happened to him. This woman practiced feminism, and she couldn't find a mate. And or this society full of feminists couldn't, the men didn't want to marry the women anymore because they were too educated and too independent, and so the
Mm.
whole thing collapsed. You know what I
What
mean?
happens when you don't like a fact? Like, I think it would. This whole process of finding the perfect religion would work if we just accepted generally accepted facts as information and then went by them. But let's say you somebody doesn't like a fact about a certain thing, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to ignore that fact." What do you think? How do you deal with that problem? Because then your religion that you're going to invent is not going to be as good as it could be if you ignore the facts you don't like. Vincent, what do you think?
Well, if you ignore facts, the idea under the beyondist system is that your society would collapse.
Hmm.
And under the system, societies are allowed to collapse. So, he's against too much foreign aid and too much of,
Who's he, by the way? I was talking about you or me. Like, if we were did a live stream and we're trying to make the perfect religion, and then we get to a certain fact and go, "Oh, I really don't like that fact." As human beings, we're fallible, we're emotional, we just don't like certain things.
I would
So
pay
that
for
would
that,
ruin
wouldn't
the
I?
religion.
I would pay for that if
Yeah, that's
I
true.
would
Yeah.
I would pay for that, and people would be able to look at me, and I would be an example.
Hmm.
If this is what happens when you deny the facts, you turn out like Vincent Bruno.
Yeah. Or like I ignore some facts and you turn out like me. We're all fallible and got all our issues. What do you think, Claire? Are you just listening, or how does this work? Oh, okay, Claire. Okay,
But I
you
mean, the thing
yeah.
is, but I look at Islamic societies and I say, I just personally don't want to live like that. And I don't, I think the more Islamic you are, when,
Mm,
look, I mean, when you're following Hadith, if you're following these insane Hadiths, I do think there's going to be problems in your
mm.
society. I don't think it's good to
What's the
follow.
worst? What do you really hate besides homosexuality? That's obviously going to be a problem. Is there anything else that stands
Well,
out
there's the
in
slavery, there's the misogyny, there's the kind of like outlandish,
which kind
weird.
of misogyny? Because I think some of the are like according to white people's misogyny. I think a lot of the women love that misogyny. It's just white people labeling it that way. You know, like having different roles because you're different. White people might call it
I know, but
misogyny.
like saying that women can't be full witnesses. You need two women for one
Mhm.
man. I mean, there's no reason to do that. Women are just as cognizant. If a woman saw something, you're not going to believe her.
No, no, me personally, less so, yeah, because my wife might say something and she'd be like, and I'll be like, "Are you sure?" And then she might change her mind, or I said, "Do you remember that happened?" And then, so me personally, I'm very sexist, and I think Islam is great being sexist like that. I don't call it misogyny; it's just different.
Well,
You
I
know,
mean,
women are
look,
better in so many ways as well. They're much nicer people than men, I would say, but
okay, well,
that could be sexist as well.
brown women will tolerate that because brown women don't want freedom and they don't mind. Look, brown people are meant to be slaves of each other. Even if they're not slaves of white people, they're slaves of each other and they treat each other
Mm,
horribly. And this
mm,
is, they don't have that yearning for, they don't have that spark in them in their brain to say, brown women are not going to be like, hey, I'm not dumb. I don't need two, we don't need two of us to equal one man. And a white woman knows she's intelligent, and a white woman is not going to behave like a brown woman where she's going to be running around saying falsities all day until the point that men can't trust her anymore. And that's brown men with their own women have realized that they're women like, but brown men do it too, but it's just that you can dominate the woman and you can gaslight her. But it's
mm.
your, yes, brown men are used to their women not being honest, and so you cannot trust them. White men are used to women being honest because whites are more honest, and so we can trust our women.
I didn't know. I didn't really know that. I kind of thought there was a lot more adultery going on amongst some white people. It didn't seem to be particularly honest to me. I thought,
Oh, well, adultery. Okay, you're pointing out, one thing. First of all, adultery. The only reason that adultery is not happening in the Islamic world is because the women are forced not to practice adultery. And if you
mm,
gave them the freedom, I think that they would be even more adulterous
oh,
than white women are. But yes, white women have the freedom to practice adultery. So yes, they're going to do it more. But when it comes to general everyday life, are white women more honest, than brown women, or are they less flippant? Are white people have a slightly more scientific mind, and so, but also white women would know they can't get away with lying to their white men because they're intelligent and can see through
mm,
things, and so there would be less likely to even try it. You know what I mean? I mean, the
yeah.
white races, everyone makes fun of the white race for being overly logical. You're too logical. Well, that kind of
Mm.
prevents too much lying in your society because we can see through each
I
other's.
think there's a. What do you think about this? I always had this thought, and well, in the past, I had this thought that white people and the Western world is very logical, but people love to just imagine all sorts of ideas, like the idea of romance. Like the romantic idea is that there's somebody who's meant for you, there's soulmates and all this kind of stuff. That's very a magical idea. There's loads of magical ideas like that in the Western world. So I
We
think
have pro-
they
we have
claim they're
problem.
scientific, but they're feeling based. Like you, I mean, I don't know, do you believe a man could be a woman if he feels like it?
No, I don't. And we were
Because that's
talking
it.
about
That's a typical white thing. You don't have brown people thinking that. That's very feeling, not logical.
it. Well, yes, we were talking about white people have a problem with fantasy, whereas, and a lot of people, we were talking about black people in America making fun of white people because we're into Harry Potter and we're into mystical movies and fairy tales, and black people are known to make fun of white people for that. Yes, black people are more like what's going on in the street, who shot who's doing a drug deal, like, more like the physical kind of everyday experience. And that's why in America I say all the brown people are going Muslim and all the white people are going Hindu, because Muslim, the brown people, it's more like Islam is, even though there's fantasy in it, it is, the Sharia is more about, okay, like, how do you control the women? How do you control gays? How do
Hmm.
you control society? How do you get people to behave this way? How do you regulate the banks? Things like that. Whereas
Exactly.
Hindu,
Fantastic. That's why I agree. You know, like white Muslim women just commented, oh, there's adultery. Sure, there probably would be loads more adultery if there weren't rules, but people want to be protected from their own stupidity. Like adultery is a bad idea. And if you feel like it's just, you're going to get punished for it, you do it less and you do better for yourself. So, yeah, that's where I see it.
I know, but also there's a degree where the fantasy helps the white race, and that we're more like, we were talking about Kevin. What is his name? McDonald? Not McDonald. What was his name? Claire? Not Kevin McDonald. Is that who it is? Um, um,
It is Kevin MacDonald.
Kevin McDonald was talking about how white people's ability to think in extreme, abstract, and sometimes useless ways actually has helped them build up their civilization, because money is abstract, rights are abstract, these different kinds of things are abstract. So it's a double-edged sword. Yes, white people are more likely to, yes, we like Harry Potter, and if you look at our culture, it was all about fairy tales
Hmm.
and
You know,
and
by the
and
way, Islam teaches that all the different groups or subgroups are different and they've got different abilities. I'm just saying, poor white people at the moment, that if they only had like a clear set of rules and religions, like you're saying, right? They would be much better off. Like, I'm not saying white people by default, by their race, they're terrible. I think all the different races have their strengths and weaknesses. Like, black people seem to be really strong and they win all the Olympics and stuff. That's probably their strength, and they've probably got some other weakness somewhere else. Do you know what I mean?
um yes, and I do think that, but we were talking about this. Does the white will the white race ever agree on a set of rules? No, they won't. We're too individualistic. We're too. I mean, just as the same, they say that our physical, white people are the most diverse between each other. We have lighter skinned and darker skin and blonde hair and brown hair and blue eyes and
Yeah.
green eyes, and all these different individual different separations in us genetically. And so they say that we're the most individualistic. Yes, I think I think that white people are the most combative amongst each other. We're the most disagreeable.
Yeah.
I think
Sure,
white
I
people
agree, and I think there's, like you said, there's a strength in it and a weakness in it. And like, is Rock Muncher saying black people's IQ would be their weakness? I probably, if they're the strongest, they can't be the best at everything. But I don't think IQ is the only thing that you can measure a human being by. I think we in a Western society, we measure IQ. IQ is problem solving, right? Basically mathematical, technical kind of stuff. But there's other kind of things like social, I don't know what they call it, emotional IQ and stuff like that, and being more
yeah,
social.
emotional
Like I
IQ.
think Arabs, I don't think they're the smartest people, but they're so much more friendly, right? Okay, that's come more in their nature, right? They've been like that for thousands of years.
That's
Maybe.
deceitful. That's deceitful, though. And I don't count. Jehovah's Witnesses are very nice and they're fucked up
Oh,
people.
what? Oh man. Okay, maybe my theory is wrong. I'm just
Well, the
going.
thing is, I think that Arabs are more deceitful. I think that I know that they're more hospitable than white people. I know white
Oh
people
yeah,
tend
yeah.
to,
They've got loads of issues as well. They're a bit crazy. They admit they're a bit crazy as well, right? But they seem to be like more social, and it's been true for like since even before Prophet Muhammad. So
well,
maybe
yeah,
there's
everyone
something
is
going on there.
everyone has noticed the lighter and blonder you are in amongst white people, kind of, okay, like Swedish, Norwegian, Denmark, those people are a little bit colder than southern Europeans, Italians, Greeks, Spanish. They're more emotional, they're more social, they're more talkative, they're more demonstrative. You know what I mean? Whereas Northern Europeans are more, cold and to themselves and not very sociable and things like that. Whereas, like, in France, They have, at least this is what I was taught in French class, that the French have only a special room in their house that guests are allowed to go. And it's very improper in France to give someone a tour of your whole house, your kitchen, they have a parlor. They don't even, they tend to have parlors that are made just for guests. And, they're not as, and I do think that, there's a racial element to that. And, my mother, I come from a mixed Scandinavian and Southern European background. And yes, there's a big difference between my my Italian family and my Scandinavian family. The Scandinavian family, they don't talk. They're all disparate. They're all so individualistic that they're all hermits. And, Scandinavians are known for being hermits. Actually, did you know this? The Swedish government makes not forced, but makes the government, not the people, the government makes social events because people don't socialize. And people just don't socialize in Scandinavia. And
yeah, I
the
think
government,
just the weather affects you, right? Like the weather's terrible in Scandinavia, right? It's always snowing and stuff like that, and you're trapped in your tiny house and stuff like that. And then if you got warmer weather, you got more time to chill out, and it affects you. But as I say, it's different weather and different weather affects your biology and makes you different and better in different ways. Like white Muslim women said something about if you're in a colder culture, then you have to plan ahead and you're more, I think, desperate. Basically, I'm kind of summarizing, and that makes you really good at certain things like planning and stuff like that. And maybe if you're in a warm culture, you're just too relaxed. And I mean, the pros and cons in all these situations.
yeah, no, I mean, the organization tends to be a northern trait, and Southerners, even in Europe, Southern Europeans are much less organized. I mean, Italy was famous for the fact that every year, all the mail that never got delivered, they would just take it out and burn it. They would have like burning parties of and that to me, that's horrible. To me, and they saw this as like a social
yeah, they're like, so what? Who cares?
Yes.
Which is cool. It's like here in Jordan. Like in the beginning, when somebody that we would make a plan the day before, and then in the morning, my mother-in-law would come and say, "We've got to change the plan," and I'm really angry, and I'm like, "I'm British. I can't change the plan." Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah, no, I mean, you can't. Yeah, yes, change of plans. And when I did notice when I was a Hindu the lack of organization in Hindu organizations, and I did notice the lackadaisicalness, and I did notice the inability to keep a plan. And yes, I think that Indians are more likely to say we're going here, and then to just be like, oh, never mind that. We're all going somewhere else, and not even forming everybody. And then half of the people go to the new place, and then half of the people go to the second place, and then nothing happens because all the meeting couldn't happen because you weren't all in the same place because someone decided to change it. Yes, I think that is more of an Indian trait than a white trait.
But the good thing about that is like you actually do more social things. Like you just turn up and you do stuff, and people more relaxed and they just take more time doing stuff. Like, okay, a neighbor turns up to a house and they'll just stay as long as they want and they won't plan it. I do feel like planning sounds like a good idea but like sometimes we because I've been brought up in England as cold climate. We plan so much that we don't do anything. It's something to do. It's weird. I think we go over the top with the planning.
Well, it depends on what you're doing. Like I used to hate these political meetings. People would arrive late. They wouldn't get the whole thing. And people would be talking. And it's when okay, fine. If it came to conquest, it's better to be organized than disorganized.
Yeah.
And it comes
That's why you guys are conquering everything right now.
National
Maybe.
defense, what do you want, an organized national defense or a disorganized national defense? And it really, and this is the one, that now Indian people own more property in London than British people.
Oh, sorry, I missed that last thing. I was just looking at the chat. Oh, I'm going to ask Skyworks one thing. Skyworks, you think we're all stupid. That's fine. But give us one piece of wisdom. Maybe we can learn from you. Because it's easy to shoot things down, but actually give some positive wisdom. go for it. Anyway, carry on, Vincent. Sorry.
No, but I was saying that Indian people own more property in London now than British people, and that's a little bit scary. I'm scared of dark people in engineering, in science, in medicine, in these different kinds of things. I know, like, white people. I've known white people who were in coding that have complained that, since all these other races have gotten involved in coding, the coding is going to shit because they don't think as linearly and they don't have as much long range perception and things like
Mm,
that. And yes,
interesting.
I
Yeah, I
I
mean, all the brown people like me are taking over coding. Definitely, is true. Um,
yes, it's taking over.
But
And
maybe it's just too many brown people suddenly flooding it, and you don't know the quality. When there were only one or two white people coding, and there were hardly anybody coding, then the people coding were like self-selected, like they were all a peak. Do you know what I mean? Like if there's only two people coding in the whole world, you're probably going to be really good at it. But now you've got a million brown people like me coding because I teach coding and stuff like that, and it's maths as well. All the maths teachers turning into brown people as well, right? Um, yeah, I think it could be like they haven't sifted the quality yet. That's the problem, maybe.
well, I no, I think it's more of look, the white race invented all of this science and everything like that, and so it's more
Did
indicative.
they?
Of course, we invented the computers, and we invented. If you
Oh
look at
yeah,
all
the
this,
modern science. You mean like not like you don't want to go back to algebra and the origin of
well, I
maths
mean,
and
white
stuff
people
like
did a
that.
lot of mathematics, and I know other races did mathematics, but when it comes to modern sciences, chemistry, biology, cloning, that was all white people. I think that we're more suited for that. And yes, I wrote about that. I said, as
Hmm.
as as society becomes more Indian, it's going to become less efficient. It's going to become more polluted, and it's going to become more corrupt. There's a reason why India is so polluted and disorganized and corrupt, and it's a racial problem.
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily laughing at you. The live chat is hilarious, uh, a lot wrong as well. But I don't know. Yeah, maths is almost 100% white. Is that true? I don't know. It's not. Well, I can only speak for maths teachers. I'll tell you something funny, right? Just before this, I had to go on an online meeting because I'm an online private tutor. It was like a parents' evening, and all the teachers are Muslim. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that this is really, really, really scary.
Right,
And
it's self-selecting. Where are the white people? They were like, the only person who was white was the kind of the administrator.
well, we
She's
were
like the
talking
paperwork.
about we were talking about this, that now as our civilization has become over civilized and ripe, white people, yes, are fleeing. Oswald Spengler said that this would happen. He said that white people would stop fleeing the hard sciences and technical thinking and politics, and more of kind of like the black and white stuff, and would start going more for, like, they are like highfalutin metaphysics and esotericism and the occult. And yes, white people are dropping out of like the part of society that maintains it and keeps it going. And also part of that has to do with, being over, like I said, over civilized. But um you know
Or
uh,
are they
uh
too depressed? That's the impression I get. Too depressed and distracted. Like I was. Okay, so I'll give you a different example. One of my students' parents said, this is when I was still in England. He said, "I don't employ British people. I might employ South African white people because the British people are too distracted on Facebook and stuff like that, and they just can't work. They can't work seriously." So, I mean, there's
yeah,
some
no,
sort
I
of
mean, our
yeah.
cultures are, there's a certain degree where the culture is destroying us. And hopefully, my only thing is that hopefully, like Oswald Spengler was hoping, or like the Nazis did, the Nazis saw that they were over civilized, that they had gone too far, and that everyone was just like uh oh, you know, nihilistic now. And like, but they tried to say, okay, fine, not, we're nihilists, and it's hard to do that, but just for the sake of doing it, let's forge ahead, and let's, okay, Like, let's be white people who are surrounded by technology, who know how to use it. Let's be white people who made all the science but continue in it. You know what I mean? And like, that's the message that I'm trying to spread, is like, force yourself to stay in the sciences, force yourself to stay in politics, force yourself to stay in technical trades and things like that. I mean, and
Mm.
you know what
I
I
feel
mean?
they're too depressed. Like you can just they would do it if they really wanted to, but they're too depressed because they don't have any. That I think atheism has really killed them. You know, like because there's a what's I talk to students who are really atheistic and they're like, oh, what's the point of life? I don't know what I'm doing, and then they're not motivated to do anything. That's the problem. Can I just quickly respond to Skyworks? I asked Skyworks to come up with something useful, and Skyworks basically said what we agreed on like 20 minutes ago, which is basically follow the facts. So Skyworks, come up with something better than that, I would say. He said they are, is it Skyworks a man?
I think he said yes.
Yeah. So Skyworks, that was like not very impressive. Like anybody could think of that. Anyway,
Well,
sorry, Vincent.
back to what you were saying, this came up in my therapy that, okay, in therapy, I've been noticing this going on in the Western psychological world, where now things are starting to stop making sense and they're getting into lots of opinion. And a lot of it doesn't work for me because, I have a very logical mind, but I did admit, if you believe in this nonsense, yes, your life is going to be easier. Okay, like we were talking, do you know who Norman Vincent Peale is?
No.
Okay, he wrote a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. It was Christian positive thinking, and
Mm,
Donald Trump is a follower of his. Okay, it's all just affirmations. Everything's going to
mm,
be fine. God loves me. God has me. I can do anything I want.
yeah.
It's just self praises. But the thing
Yeah.
is, if you sit there and if you're like everything's going to be fine, then yes, you are going to wake up less depressed. You are.
Yeah, but I don't think you believe yourself. I'm sure people would try that and it probably doesn't work. It's like,
Well, Donald
ev-
Trump said it worked. Donald Trump says it works for him, and he got pretty far.
Interesting.
No,
Mm.
I do think. Okay, if you wake up
I
every
agree with you. That's probably a dumb idea, right? So let's agree with that. It doesn't make
okay,
any
but
sense.
if you wake up every day like, well, I don't know what's going to happen to me. Something bad could happen. God doesn't. There is no God who's protecting me. Like, you're gonna wake up more depressed than if you wake up with this. Everything is fine. God has my back. Nothing bad can
But it has
happen
to
to
be
me.
based on something that makes sense to your brain. Like it makes sense to me. I've debated. I don't know. Do you believe in God, Vincent, or you're just
I'm
making up the religion?
agnostic. I'm
Agnostic,
agnostic.
right? So I'm just saying I've debated this like just logically and mathematically. God must exist. Statistically, there's like zero chance God for not to exist. Let's just say that that's true, right? Just for the sake of my argument. Based on that, I can believe there's a God, and then I can see God seems to have a plan, because if you look at the world, it seems to be like a literal, what's the word, a a thing that keeps you alive, the machines that keep you alive,
A
but
respirator, or
or whatever. Like the whole planet seems to be prepared to keep you alive, right? So then you can go, okay, God definitely exists. Does God seems to have a plan to, seems to be a nice enough God to give you all the stuff that you need, and then therefore I can, feel comfortable that God, wants to do well for me if I listen to God and stuff like that. There's some logic, not just affirmations. I'm gonna I everything's fine, therefore it's going to be fine. Like it's not empty words. It's kind of based on something. Do you get what I'm saying? It's not the same as the Donald Trump thing where you just simply claim stuff. I don't know, maybe it worked for Donald Trump somehow. I don't really know his beliefs or something. I thought he was a Christian for a minute, but anyway.
he kind of is. But no, Norman Vincent Peale officiated his second marriage.
Oh.
Yeah, officiated his second marriage. But okay, even with what you're saying, yes, you're going to be less depressed with that kind of worldview. But okay, let's say not that, like people who lie to themselves and others about, if if you lie to yourself or others about harsh realities. If there's a harsh reality and you're the type of person that can just like tune it out and just come up with just saying whatever, how it's not that bad, or how it's not what it seems, or whatever, or there's some kind of out, then yes, you're going to be less depressed than someone who's very logical and rational, who says, no, this is the reality of the situation and there's nothing I can do about it.
Ooh, I would disagree. I would say the people that I know, even amongst my brothers and stuff, who like depressed and stuff, they don't follow logic. Like I would explain to something, them I'll explain something to them. They'll totally agree, but they won't follow through with the logic and implement it in their lives, and then they get depressed because they try to avoid reality. So I think being logical is helpful, actually. Like being, for example, believing in God is a logical thing. I don't know if you disagree with that. Do you disagree that believing in God is logical? Maybe we could just talk before I leave, because I need to do a few things. But like we could just like prove God exists right now. It's really easy.
Well, no, well, look, I told you that if you define God as the physical universe, then yes, you can prove that he exists. But the thing you'll never prove, even if I did say, well, God obviously has to exist, you would never. God wrote the Quran and God sent Muhammad and all this other kind of stuff. You can't prove
You're
that
saying you
stuff.
can never prove that? Oh, that's really easy.
You
It's like,
can't
okay,
prove
for
that.
example, do you believe in the Big Bang, for example?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Like we have to believe in something, right? So people who believe in the Big Bang, then they can easily believe that God wrote the Quran, because it talks about the Big Bang, and you've got nothing nearly as close as the Big Bang description
So
in the Quran
just
as in
because a
any other
book gets
religion.
some scientific
I'm
facts
just
right doesn't mean it.
there's loads of it. That's the problem, and it's not just scientific facts. It's kind of all these kind of numericals, symmetry, and the way it's written is crazy. How it's there's so many things you could point out to prove that it couldn't just have been made by a human being
I know, but
of
Jews
that
did the
time.
same thing. They made gematria, and now they went backwards, and then they said, oh well, if you give each number in the Torah, each letter in the Torah a number, you get these mystical calculations that show how old the universe is, and like that's all reverse engineering. That's backward engineering, where they wrote the book plain and simple, and then they went back
No,
and they
you got a good
created.
point. If people could prove the Quran had changed, then you got a good point. But that's one of like the strong points of the Quran. Like nobody can prove it changed. They've even got like pages of the Quran, like in Birmingham or somewhere, and it's the same as the Quran. It's like the written from the same time as Prophet Muhammad. So it hasn't even changed. So you would have had a good point if that was true. If the Quran kept on being changing.
No, the Quran didn't change. They reverse engineered this. So this is what the Jews did. They wrote the Torah
I'm saying
plain.
I'm saying your argument would be true for the Torah, but not for the Quran,
No,
because it
no,
hasn't
you don't
changed.
understand that.
Oh, go on.
You don't understand that first they wrote the Torah, and there was no gematria. There was no code in there. There was no, oh, this letter means this and this, and then the esoteric and
Oh.
metaphysical, that didn't exist. They just went and they created a new system on top of that they forced to work with the Torah. And the same thing with the Quran. All these numerical analysis all came later and was a late. Of course, you made it work. You engineered it so it would work with the Quran. And then you said, well, look, this is proof the Quran's true. It's not proof the Quran's true.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the verse and check for yourself. Everybody can have their opinion. There's so many interesting questions, like flying horse. No, I don't. I believe the flying horse thing was just part of a dream, and there's lots of evidence. So, for example, the flying horse thing that took Prophet Muhammad to Masjid al-Aqsa, the distant mosque, that didn't exist at the time, so it definitely had to be a dream. And earlier on, Skyworks suggested that. What was your idea? Your second idea, Skyworks? You came up with something new. Oh yeah, he said expose yourself to new perspectives, and I do that when I speak to Vincent. So I'm trying Skyworks. I don't have a basic idea of biology and psychology. Wow. I mean,
Well,
it
the
could be
thing that
true,
works
but I don't
against
know.
you, if the Quran was so scientific, every scientist would be a Quranist. You know what I mean? I say the same thing.
Mm.
Hindus talk about, oh, Vedanta is so scientific. So then why isn't every scientist a Vedantist? Why hasn't it taken over the scientific world?
Well, it used to, and now it's not. For now, because there's a fashion called atheism. So, and we could talk about, like, do people really follow logic, even if they're scientists and their job is to be, logical? Does it mean they're always logical? Do they maybe do things that they prefer to do, right? Because they rather not believe in a god, so they can do anything they want. There could be competing, you know, feelings and competing needs. Let's say, should I follow logic, or should I follow my feelings that tell me I can do anything I want?
And I'm just saying that every single religion says that they're scientific.
Yeah.
Hindus who eat shit say it's scientific. You know what I mean? Like it's just none of these religions. How could you all be scientific and only one of them is the right religion? You all claim to be scientific. No one agrees with you, or at least, and you don't agree with each other. If you asked Hindus, is the Quran scientific? They would tell you no. If I asked a Muslim, are the piranhas scientific? They would say no.
Hmm.
Do you think the
Why?
piranhas? Do you think the piranhas are scientific?
I don't know enough. I've just studied the Hindu literature a little bit, and they kind of say, like, the Ganges was made by some water coming off somebody's hair, and I was like, no, there's no evidence of that. So I kind of didn't delve into it more than that.
Well, you know that when it comes to hadith, Muslims believe all kinds of weird shit. I know
Yeah.
Muslims. There's Muslims in the world who believe that there's a wall and there's a snake trying to get through it, and you have to pray to keep the wall thick. You know what I
Wow,
mean?
I don't know about that one, but
That's an
yeah, I mean,
Indonesian Muslim.
oh, okay. I debate lots of Muslims about stupid things they believe, and I say, look, the Quran doesn't say that. Why do you still believe it? Like the miracle stuff, like they think that the way the Quran describes the splitting of the Red Sea is different to how people imagine it and stuff like that. So, you know,
Yeah, well, I mean, I refuse to believe that everyone's holy book is so scientific and all the scientists just can't see it. You know what I
mm,
mean? Christianity is scientific, the Torah is scientific. This is the Vedas are scientific. And I read the whole Vedas and I read about 50% of the Quran, and 90% of it was threats that if I didn't believe I was going to hell. You
all
know,
right, wow.
you've never seen all
Well,
those threats in the,
what do you think about the first verse of the Quran?
well, what is that?
It's, I am God, the most giving, the one who gives so much that even if you don't ask for it, I'll still give it to you. And then I am the second. So I'll just say it in Arabic, Bismillah, in the name of Allah, the one true God, who is Rahman, which means I give, like, even if people are nasty to me or disagree with me, Rahman means giving for free. And then I am Rahim. I give you if you use your quality. If you give your if you use your God-given abilities, I'll reward you even more. And the simple translation of that, usually in simple words, is I am the most merciful. So I'm the most gracious, the most merciful. I mean, do you think a God like that is really that bad?
Well, he's bad in other ways. The God of the Torah says these same things too, and he's a fucking asshole.
Anyway, I gotta go, but I think we gotta do. I think I've got your email, but I'm sure
Yes.
even if I don't have your email, Claire's got everybody's emails in the world. So thank you, Claire, for always putting us in contact, by the way, with everybody. So I gotta go, but great talking to you, Vincent, and thanks
Yes, me
for
too.
the entertainment in the live chat, and thanks, Claire, as well, if you're still there. All right, bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Um, I mean, unfortunately, look, I have so many things I have to study. I did study Islam a bit, and I know there's the homophobia and the misogyny, and even he said he agrees that women should have a lesser degree of witnessing ability. He does believe it should take two female witnesses to equal one male witness, and you know what I mean. And a white Muslim woman in the chat knows that too, and I'm sure she agrees with the same thing. And then they're going to say it's not misogyny. And like, what's his name? Oh God, what was his name? Mujahid or whatever his name was, the Bengali Muslim, said that this is because, well, women shouldn't be burdened with outside tasks outside the house. and these different kinds of things. She has a different, but to say that she's not smart enough to be a witness, is absurd. Well, let's see where Claire is. Claire. Oh, the plumber. She has the plumber. The plumber is at her house. So I can't post the link, Pubble Muncher. I don't have it. So I can't let you on. I can't have you on. But look, I have to dissect Islam more and to fight these ideas that the Quran is scientific and explains the Big Bang. And we don't even know if the Big Bang is real. We don't know that the Big Bang is how it happened. It's a theory. We weren't there. And so, to say that the Quran agrees with something that we don't even know really happened doesn't prove that it's scientific. Lots of problems with these things, and unfortunately there's so many of these lies and there's too few people who are smart enough to see through them. And you're back?
Only for a bit. I still have more things to sort out, but I won't be long now. So please carry on if you have more to say,
actually, no,
and I will try and join you.
No,
You have to go?
I do have to go because I have another scheduled interview.
Okay, then. Where will you be?
I
mean, do you want to tell us, in case you do?
I'm going to be on Israeli News Live, but I don't know where. I'm going to be on Israeli News Live, but I don't think it'll be on YouTube.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to let you go. Thank you very much for being part of the show.
Sure, thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.